Talk to me about where we should put our hands.
Oh my goodness. They should be first things visible. In fact, every time you say hello, you should be, "Hi, I'm Vanessa. So good to see you." We love a gesture. It's funny because there's a primal part of our brain that knows that our hands are our deadliest weapons. So even though we think we look at the face, like when I ask people, "Where do you look when you first see someone?" People always say, same, eyes or face, sometimes mouth. And that is the second place we look. But the first place we always look, especially when we're seeing someone for the first time or in a meeting or for the first interaction, is we want to see, what is your intention? And so as humans, we will do anything to avoid the most awkward thing in humanity, which is, are we going to hug? Or are we going to handshake? Are we going to high five? Are you withholding anything? And so part of our brain is always just looking to see if you're going to handshake, high five. And on Zoom, it's even more confusing because our brain knows that we should see hands, but when it can't, it worries. And that is because part of our brain and our amygdala begins to fire when we can't see someone's hands, especially when we're trying to understand them. And so the best thing you can do is have your hands visible. That helps with trust. And the second, if you want to get fancy, is to actually have them be explanatory, which we can talk about if you want to.
Yes, tell me.
Okay,
Explain.
let's get. So really, really good speakers, they know their content so well that they can speak to you with two different modes. They can speak to you with their words, but they can also use their gestures to emphasize, underline, and outline. So the best TED Talks, I love TED Talks. And my team and I analyzed thousands of hours of TED Talks looking for patterns. I didn't understand why everyone who gives a TED Talk is good, right? You're not invited to give a TED Talk if you're not good. And I wondered, why do some go viral, like millions and millions of views, and others, by relatively unknown people, they get thousands? And we looked for all these variables, gender and color and smiling. We clocked the amount of time they smiled. The biggest differentiator was gestures. The TED Talks that had the most views used an average of 465 gestures in 18 minutes. We coded a chunk of TED Talks. The least popular viewed TED Talks use an average of 272 gestures in 18 minutes. What's happening is a really good speaker is making themselves easy to understand by saying, if they have 3 ideas, they hold up 3. If they have a really big idea, they don't show that it's small, they say that it's big. In fact, if I were to say, I have a really big idea, but hold up my fingers really small, you're more likely to believe my gesture over my words. And so in this way, we have to speak to people on 2 levels. We have to show them what we're saying with our verbal content. But we also have to say, I'm going to emphasize and underline my content for you so that you can actually comprehend and outline while I'm speaking. So it's almost like we're giving pictures to our words.
Yeah, it's fascinating that the physical language comes second to the spoken language, even though that's the thing that is usually most front and center.
I think this is why we love emojis, right? Like, we are actually quite pictorial. Like, we like to have images. So, if I send a text message, I'm fine, my friends are, what, is she fine? I don't know. Like, that doesn't sound fine. But if I were to have a little smiley crying face, I guess I'm very millennial because I use that crying side face. That shows, look, I'm fine. Ha ha. Smiling. But if I were to use I'm fine with the emoji with the circle crazy eyes, you'd be like, oh no, she not fine. And that is because we tend to give more weight to the visual. And that is, I think, why we're speaking in more and more images as we go. Hand gestures in person is like adding pictures to your book, which we all like.
What if someone's not speaking? What if somebody's supposed to be just receiving? Where should our hands go then?
Okay, so you can be a charismatic listener. I think that there's a myth about charisma that to be charismatic, you have to be the one talking. To be charismatic, you have to be extroverted and bubbly and the life of the party and tell great stories. That is one kind of flavor of charisma. But the other flavor of charisma is actually being an excellent listener. In fact, quiet, contemplative introverts are they're very charismatic. So while you're listening, you actually don't want to use gestures. You want to use nonverbal warmth cues. Nonverbal warmth cues are ways you signal to the other person, wow, I am so deeply with you that I want you to keep going and tell me more. And I'm even going to partake in your warmth. So my favorite things to do while listening. And by the way, when you're listening with your hands, I like to keep my hands as still as possible, but still visible. And that could even be like a steeple. I love listening with the steeple. When you put your tips of your fingers together in sort of a church steeple, that's a power pose for the hands. So you can put them in a steeple or have them at rest. More importantly, though, is actually your head behavior when we're listening to someone. So a slow triple nod, it looks like this. You do it really well. They have found that the other person speaks 67% longer when you do a slow triple nod. It's like the other person's saying, please keep going, tell me more. It's like a nonverbal ... So I would recommend hands still, visible at rest, occasional slow triple nod. You can even do one of my favorite cues, which is called a lower lid flex. So if you flex your lower lids at me, yeah, great. When you do this, this is across cultures. When humans flex their lower lid, it actually minimizes the amount of light that is entering into your eye, which allows you to see detail. So, for example, if someone's really like squinting to try to see something, they're trying to make their vision sharper. In conversation, this is a way of showing I am listening so deeply that I'm trying to see every detail.
Mm.
I have a theory. So, in the name of science, I love doing research experiments in my lab. We looked at the 50th sexiest men alive, People issue. And I noticed that so many of the men were showing a hardened lower lid. And that is because I think we find it attractive when someone is so engaged, they're trying to see us deeply. It's sort of that blue steel look. I think that's why he did it in Zoolander. This is really helpful for two things. One, when you want to show that you're deeply listening, you can harden your lower lid. Ah, yes, I see you. There are times if you see it on someone else, it could mean they're deeply listening, but it also could mean that they're trying to figure something out or they're scrutinizing. So I have noticed that occasionally in negotiations or presentations, if I see someone do that lower lid flex at me, I'll say, does this all make sense? Are we all good here? Chris, do you have any questions for me? Because I noticed their brain just went into a deep listening mode. And there was one time where I uncovered a confusion that the boss was having right in the moment, right there, that if I hadn't have clarified that, it would have messed up the entire pitch. It would have messed up the entire pitch. So look out for it as well as making sure someone's on the same page as you.
Yeah, because they've become more intense. Why? What is it that they're doing? Is it they're paying more attention, or is it they're maybe a bit confused?